Nigerian Defense Academy also joining us. So I'm going to hand over the proceedings to Her Excellency to help us through. Your Excellency, ma'am.
Yes. So we do have a program. Good morning, everyone. And it's a great honor for me to be the moderator of this session this morning, and to thank Kayode particularly for still challenging us intellectually on issues that are very, very pertinent to the national discourse of our country. So thank you very much for all of you who have joined, and thank you to the speakers and resource persons, but also thank you to our lead, who has been able to gather us together in this form. It's a great pleasure for me to be the one to moderate, and I'm grateful to all of you for allowing me to do that. We do have a program for today, and I would want to follow the program by inviting Kayode himself to give us an opening and welcome remark before we go into the meat of our meeting this morning. So Kayode, over to you, please.
Thank you, Excellency. I thought I just did that. So it's just to give overview about the PBDF online series. It's something we want to be doing every month, looking at current issues. We notice that we have a huge personality on our forum that can give back to the society, even at retirement, and some that are active. Again, I want to really appreciate Ambassador Nkoyotoye, who is also the chairperson, the vice chairperson of PBDC, the Peace Building Development Consult, and the Peace Building Development Foundation. Of course, we're all aware of current issues regarding the U.S. interests in Nigeria and some other countries, and where Nigeria is along the ECOWAS region. So our intention is to really engage high-performing professionals and academics and people in the civil society community, security agencies, to hear from our experts, and perhaps also use some of the resolutions that will give out in policy, framework, and opinions. So please, there is no media involved in this discussion. It's strictly for academic purposes and education. Let's dig in, especially during the question and answer session, so we can all be better informed. I'm very excited, and I can confirm that our resource person are people that can deliver on the subject matter. So you are welcome to this first PBDF online lecture series. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kayode, for that excellent introduction. I think we have basically taken the welcome as well as introduction to the lecture series. Let me give a brief overview, and then we will go straight to this. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to this timely session on navigating U.S.-Nigerian relations, balancing security, diplomacy, strategic autonomy in a changing global order. This relationship between Nigeria and the United States is one of Africa's most consequential bilateral partnerships. There's no doubt about it that this is really one of the very high-level relationships that between the United States and Africa. It spans security cooperation, democratic governance, trade and investment, energy transition, people-to-people ties, and regional stability across West and Central Africa. For Nigeria, the challenge is not simply how to cooperate with a long-standing partner, but how to do so in ways that strengthen national sovereignty, deepen regional leadership by us, and respond to the security and development aspirations of our people. So beyond the government-to-government relationship, Of course, we have a very significant diaspora population in America, as well as our own interpersonal relationships as citizens of our country and the expectations we have of ourselves. For the United States, on the other side, the question is how to engage Nigeria not merely as a security partner, but as a strategic actor with its own priorities, constraints, and vision for the global order. So in this session, I'm going to raise a few questions, and I hope that the speakers will be able to give us a lot of insights into what we're dealing with here today. Our discussion today is to bring diverse perspectives, and as the moderator, my role will be to guide the conversation so that we have a candid, respectful, and forward-looking engagement. I encourage our panelists and our resource persons to speak not only from an institutional position, not because you have been in the Navy or Army or whatever, but also to speak more broadly and to give us a reason to take away some of the thoughts that have been exchanged here and make it something that we can use to generate more discussions beyond the space of this engagement. So thank you very much and welcome to today's engagement. Let me start by going to our first speaker. The way we have worked out the presentation is such that we'll use 30 minutes for each of our resource persons. We are at liberty to use the entire time, but if the time is not used in entirety, we may reserve some of that time to a later session that will do the questions and contributions and moderation. Alternatively, we could also do the moderation immediately. I mean, the intervention immediately after the presentations have been done so that people can keep their minds actively engaged on the issues at hand. Our first presentation will be made by retired ACG, I believe that's the immigration, is that immigration? Yes. Sunday James, and he will be speaking about the US-Nigeria security and counter-terrorism cooperation. So just before you start speaking, maybe I should just also raise the point. How can the Nigeria-US security cooperation address urgent threats such as terrorism, transnational crime, instability, while also respecting human rights, civilian protection, and democratic accountability? So just looking at it from also the perspective of how this relationship is addressing terrorism and beyond terrorism, transnational crime, the instabilities that we are seeing in Nigeria, the issues of human rights, the issues of civilian protection, as well as democratic accountability. Please, you are at liberty to go beyond the question that I've raised to also engage with it more broadly. Welcome and thank you. We look forward to hearing from you now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Nkoyo. We met some time ago when I was head of media immigration. You came to see my boss, Mohamed Obande, the CG then, for your passport.
Thank you.
To our very distinguished participants, I remain SCG James Sunday retired, and the topic given to me being diplomatic and economic dimension of US-Nigeria relations. But the moderator added something to it, which has to do with counterterrorism. I want to concur with Hassan on adding counterterrorism to my discussion, because terrorism has turned to be an economic activity now, where terrorists use all the tools available to them to get money out of their clandestine activities. So back to the topic, diplomatic and economic dimension of US-Nigeria relations. The broader topic, navigating US-Nigeria relations, I will try to balance between security, diplomacy, strategic autonomy in a changing global order. And I will start my introduction by making reference to a post by Perestroika on the 2nd of May 2018 on US-Nigeria relations. It's a critical construct with respect to US-Nigeria relations backtracked to August 23rd, 1963, which was the beginning of our relationship proper with the United States. When the then American President John F. Kennedy made a phone call to the Nigerian Prime Minister then, Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, via the Samcom communication satellite. The conversation lasted only 2 minutes, 19 seconds. But in the conversation, the two leaders exchanged pleasantries and talked about what may seem casual and uninteresting to today's Nigerian situation. They discussed a boxing match in which the Nigerian middleweight boxer, Dick Tiger, defeated America's Jane Foreman. It is significant because it shows mutual respect and great diplomatic ties. This conversation symbolizes the long-time intimacy that exists between the United States of America and Nigeria. Sadly, diplomatic relations between Nigeria and the United States was at their lowest ebb during Obama's tenure. Obama's apathy and economic war on the Jonathan administration sent Nigeria into its worst economic depression in 30 years by statistics. Nigeria is gradually just recovering from Obama's 1-2 punch below the belt. But with President Muhammad Buhari at the helm of affairs of Africa's biggest nation, and the pragmatic Donald Trump at the helm of affairs of the world's unique superpower, both countries were beginning to see that they are a critical curve in their country's history. And if we have a leader able to articulate Nigeria's promise and the shared destiny of both countries have more that unites them than divides them. What are the facts available? Nigeria has Africa's largest economy. The United States, the world's largest. Nigeria is the United States' largest trading partner in Africa. Nigeria has the 4th largest democracy in the world. Nigeria is the continent's democratic leader. The United States, the world's leader. Nigeria is the only country in Africa that models its political structure on that of the United States. Both countries are seen as powers in decline. Both leaders are the oldest in their country's history. Both leaders have it rough with the media so much. Both countries have the largest Christian population amidst Muslims in the world. Both countries are the first and second with the most circulated religious activities. The United States is the most devout nation in the developed world. Nigeria is the most devout country in Africa. Nigeria is the hope of Africa with her market, human and mineral resources. A superpower like the United States will no doubt find in Nigeria a viable partner to deepen Africa's prosperity, and why not? America has an abundance of capital. Nigeria has an abundance of human and natural resources. You need labor and capital to generate economic activity. Therefore, it makes sense for America to ignore the French and expand its economic footprint in one of the most dynamic and vibrant entrepreneurial consumer markets in the world. That's Nigeria. Economic activities between both countries doesn't have to be on crude. With American capital and know-how, Nigeria can become a developed country, and therefore Nigerians will be able to afford more goods, just like the people of South Korea and West Europe. But with a difference, Nigerians have spent just about every other nation in the aforementioned countries. Nigerians literally saved the British real estate sector in 2013, outspending Russia and the UAE. South African companies saw this potential soon enough and fought hard to get entry into the Nigerian market. In 5 years, MTN became the largest and most profitable telecoms company in Africa and Middle East, with 70% of its revenue base coming from the Nigerian market. When Obama became president, his first job was to the people of Nigeria. It was all about corruption then. Then it morphed into a diplomatic tug of war over Nigeria's same-sex legislation, leading to a direct threat by Obama of economic and diplomatic retribution. So Obama decided to fly over Nigeria to visit Ghana as his first outing in Africa. Needless to say, for a country of over 200 million people who are staunchly pro-American in everything they do, it was embarrassing that the president picked Ghana over Nigeria. After all, Nigeria is often referred to as the giant of Africa. So how can you ignore the giant and be paying attention to the midget? But the most powerful black man in the world was not done with Nigeria. Then came the era of Boko Haram. Now we're discussing the counterterrorism activities. The war with Boko Haram was beginning to turn against Nigeria in desperation. Nigeria turned it, the United States became an ally, but because of the test for leadership, they refused to support us in the area of supply for military assets. And this creates a lot of gap in the fight against terrorism then. It should be noted that at that time, the US Congress was debating whether to approve a grant of $200 million to Israel to buy more American-made weapons to contain the threat in Iran, while they are depriving Nigerians of their request. This does not include even the $4 billion grant it gives to Israel and Egypt by that year. It makes sense. Israel is America's #1 ally in the Middle East, and it's a good thing to support every effort to make sure that Israel's security is not threatened. However, the Obama administration continued to treat Nigeria, America's fourth largest oil supplier, like a beggarly nation, passing on no chance to embarrass the Nigerian government and sabotage the government of President Goodluck Jonathan then. Historically, Republicans tend to treat Nigerian and other African states with dignity because of their pragmatism. There's an economic trade war between the United States and China. President Trump realizes that in America's absence, China is already filling the void, and in Russia to some extent. Therefore, as a friend and an ally, it is the best interest of US to help Nigeria develop as fast as possible instead of producing reports that seem to suggest that Nigeria might become a failed state. Furthermore, President Trump has repeated time and time again his preference for skilled workers migrating into the US and called for an end to the visa lottery. While much of the deserved duration has been focused on Trump's use of language and profanity, there is no transgression in his quest for wanting to select the best of those desiring to come to the United States of America. Going by studies carried out by the US think tanks, Nigeria outclasses Asians, Latinos, and Caucasians in the number of degree holders in the United States. So as a matter of fact, the United States, with its soft power, is the architect of today's modern interconnected world called globalization. Majority of Americans don't have a passport and are ignorant when it comes to geography. Not necessarily because they are snobbish, but because Americans really have no need to leave America. Believing they have everything, it is the leader that bears the hallmark of a power. So I believe Nigeria too will soon get to that level where we believe that we don't need any other place to go to when we are stable, economically, politically, and all around. As a matter of discourse, I will still want to go into the era of President Muhammadu Buhari at the helm of affairs of the biggest nation. It was a relationship that was smooth, but because of the lack of willpower to assist Nigeria with all that it needs to fight terrorism, the terrorists were having upper hands over the country, while our forces were trying their best to make sure that they summoned every of their effort strategically and operationally. What is the diplomatic dimension of what we are discussing today? Number one, we are going to be looking at the strategic partnership. Both Nigeria and US are influential regional powers. So collaborating on counterterrorism will bring regional stability for West Africa and democratic governance. On security cooperation, the US has to provide military assistance, intelligence sharing, and training for the Nigerian forces And doing that, it has to be selling some arms to us based on international relationship and understanding, and not depriving us the request for firepower, and then allowing the terrorists to have more weapons of war than the conventional forces. Then on governance, the US supports building democratic institutions, though disagreements occur over security tactics, migration, and human rights, which is common with Donald Trump. Then on cultural and people-to-people ties, large Nigerian diaspora in the US go for educational exchanges and family settlement. We have shared values, foster on understanding. Then on the economic dimension aspect of this discourse, investment, the US is Nigeria's largest foreign investor, particularly in oil and mining and trade sectors. In the area of trade, Nigeria exports crude oil to the US exports wheat and machinery and vehicles. This has helped a great deal. And in the area of energy and trade, beyond oil, both nations are exploring green energy, agribusiness, and technology, with the US seeking to diversify engagement beyond oil. On remittances, significant financial flows come from the large Nigerian diaspora in the US, supplementing formal economic links. Then key dynamics. Mutual necessity. The relationship endures due to strategic importance, but is pragmatic, not purely sentimental. Leverage and independence. Nigeria's oil wealth and regional role reduce aid dependence, allowing you to pursue independent policies and diversify partnerships according to research work. So we can see
your time is coming round. Just go on your time. You have 3 more minutes. Yeah.
So with all that we are discussing, I want to make reference to Malcolm X, where he says, if you are taught the wrong history, you will draw the wrong conclusion. And miseducation doesn't just confuse, it misdirects life. So what we need to do more now is to be teaching the young generation the right history so that they will understand where we're coming from and where we're going to. Thank you very much, Ambassador.
Thank you so much, Thank you so much. I think we did see in his presentation, he took us through history, laid out the foundation, 1963, when Kennedy made a call to Tafawa Balewa, and laid the basis under which that relationship was founded, one of cordiality and respect of the sovereignties of both nations. And in his presentation, he took a lot of time to show us the advantage, the potential advantages as well as just the existing ones. Nigeria being the fourth oil country, provide the fourth oil providing country to the US, and just the strategic relationships, the fact that we share a lot in common is both in terms of our governance institutions and the belief systems that exist between our countries, and just also the position of Nigeria within the African space. I think he laid that very clearly for us, and then went forward to also put a heavy blame on Obama, and then went on to tell us that the Buhari government tried to redeem what Obama had mismanaged, and pointed us in the direction of the future and why this is an important relationship that we must continue to hold on to, both in terms of its economic value and in terms of even the institutional context in which Nigeria itself is founded. Let me take 2 comments before we go to the next speaker, because we're also looking at our time. Can we take 2 comments from anyone who wants to make reference to the presentation that has been made? We certainly will still come back to the comment and the discussion much later, but at this point, I just want 2 people to chip in and say one thing, but please reference what has been said already by the guest speaker. Thank you. Any contributors? Okay, so maybe we can move on to the next presentation and wait till the very end so that we see what comes there at that end. The second presentation and the topic here is diplomatic and economic dimensions of US-Nigeria relations. This presentation will be made by retired Major General Oyefeshobi. Sorry if I've murdered the word, the name. So you're welcome, Major General. Just by way of my own personal reflections, I was just asking, how can diplomacy evolve to reflect our new realities? What kind of diplomacy do we need to see that will take into account the new realities of Nigeria? There's a growing African agency, as we have seen in many countries that are moving away from democracy to military rule. There is a growing sense in Africa now that we must own our countries and we must be in charge of our sovereignty. We are a regional leader in the sub-region as well as in Africa. What does this mean for our diplomacy and the new directions which we have to go? And what is the nature of the balance that we need to bring into global power to keep us as Nigerians relevant to the conversations that are taking place? So, sir, you're welcome to make your presentation. You have 30 minutes and your time starts now. Thank you.
Your Excellency, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Let me first start by apologizing. It seems I don't know what is wrong with my camera. It's not just picking up. So you probably just hear my voice. And then, be it as it may I also make a correction? It seems that
have we lost him? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Ambassador.
Thank you, but can you hear the speaker?
I just joined in, ma.
Okay, Major General, I'm not hearing you from here. I don't know.
yes, I lost you for a while.
Okay, please go on. We can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay. So I was saying that my talk, I was supposed to talk on the United States, Nigeria's cooperation on defense and counter-terrorism.
Please go ahead. Go ahead and make the presentation. Go ahead.
I will just go ahead and address that. Then I was also apologizing for my camera. I don't know what's wrong with it, but it doesn't seem to be picking up this morning. So I will just go ahead with the presentations for one of time. So good morning, everyone. This morning, I will be delving into one of the most critical bilateral security partnerships in Africa, and that's the cooperation between the United States and Nigeria in countering terrorism. I would like to start by stating that many people and the general opinion is that the United States is actually not doing much to help us or that, but then from my research and from what I will probably say this morning, you get to know that the relationship has actually not been one-sided. My colleague has already mentioned all the strategic things. The United States is a global actor. It has a vested interest in a stable and secure Nigeria. And the truth is that the future resilience of our partnership with the United States and Nigeria will actually depend on the balancing towards institutional reform, holistic governance-based strategies, and navigating an increasingly competitive landscape in Africa. But this morning, I will quickly look at our evolution of this relationship, the mechanisms, challenges, and future of this vital relationship. Let me start with the strategic context. Why does Nigeria matter to the United States? Well, part of it has been said. We have the largest youth population in Africa, 220 million. We have the largest GDP in Africa. We're a key oil producer. We're a major source of US oil. We are regional hegemon. We are the cornerstone of ECOWAS. So for Nigeria, partnership with the United States offers access to vital resources, advanced military hardware, cutting-edge intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance capabilities, and of course, training for our overstretched security forces. And as the former Chief of Defense Staff, Dr. Irabon noted, he said the partnership is crucial for building the capacity needed to confront asymmetric threats. So now what is the U.S. threats interest? For the United States, Nigeria is a very pivotal state in Africa in its policy architecture. Counterterrorism being one of it. They want to prevent Nigeria from becoming a safe haven for transnational terrorist groups with global ambitions like Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and so on. They want to safeguard regional stability. And of course, there is the issue of economic interest, as mentioned earlier, so I won't go to that. Let me just go straight to take a look at the threat landscape. We know what the threat landscape is all about. The Boko Haram, founded by Mohammed Yusuf in 2002, the group focused on Islamic revival, and as time went on, under Abubakar Shekau's leadership, the sect became violent, went into kidnapping, bombings, and so on. The Islamic State of West Africa Province, which was established in 2016, was a faction led by Abu Musab al-Banawi, the breakaway faction. They pledged allegiance to ISIS, and ISWAP has proven to be a more strategic and disciplined adversary because it employs a pro-state model, controlling territories, taxing communities, even providing regulatory services, and often avoiding indiscriminate violence against Muslim civilians to cultivate local support. So what are other security issues? Banditry, kidnapping in the northwest and central states of Nigeria, separatist agitations in the southeast by movement for the accreditation of sovereign state of Biafra. We have the persistent farmer-herder violence, ongoing communal clashes in the middle belt over land and resources, which has escalated into deadly violence between nomadic herders and settled farming communities. Piracy is also there. General crime, armed robbery, ethnic religious crisis. Now, all these are by the side, not even the main counter-terrorist issues. Remarkable so far, over 35,000 have been killed since 2011, over 2.5 million internally displaced. So this shows that the threat in Nigeria is not actually monolithic. The United States focus has primarily been on the Islamic insurgency in the Northeast. However, Nigeria's security forces have been overstretched in trying to respond to this multiple overlapping crises, and this dilutes focus and resources. So let me quickly take a quick look at the historical revolution of the US-Nigeria cooperation as it affects defense and security. And this is broken into different phases. We had the pre-9/11 and early engagement, which was from 1990 to 2001. Cooperation there was very limited, focusing primarily on professional military education through programs like the International Military Education and so on. But let me I mention that since year 2000, the United States has had a status of forces agreement with Nigeria that established the legal framework on which United States military personnel may operate even when they are in Nigeria. So there's something in place that allows that. That is on one hand. Then now let's look at the next stage, which was post 9/11. That's 2001 to 2009. The United States engagement with Nigeria and counterterrorism began actually in the early 2000s, as she was recognized as a potential partner. Engagement expanded to include counterterrorism, financing initiatives, and law enforcement cooperation under the Department of State Anti-Terrorism Assistance Program. There was also cooperation of the U.S. intelligence agencies in intelligence and participation in joint forums and so on. And let me mention that in the United States Department of State 2005 country report on terrorism, Nigeria was noted then as a proactive partner in regional counterterrorism dialogue and intelligence cooperation at this time. But then, even as at then, Nigeria was not still actually prioritizing the United States counterterrorism strategy. Then the next period came, which was the period of the emergence of Boko Haram. And that was from 2010 to 2014. The landscape shifted dramatically with the rise of Boko Haram in 2009, as the sect became Nigeria's most persistent and lethal terrorist threat, with intensifying violence. And by the mid-2010, United States support then focused on just training, advisory assistance, and regional collaboration. They worked closely with us as part of the multinational joint task force to coordinate part of the responses to Boko Haram attacks. But nevertheless, United States response at this time was still cautious, as they provided only limited intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance and training. There were concerns over perceived Nigerian military's human rights record, issues with corruption and strategic missteps. But the United States finally designated at this period Boko Haram as a foreign terrorist organization in 2013 under US Executive Order 13224 after years of this debate. Now, it was this particular decision that unlocked United States counter-terrorism resources and sanctions to assist Nigeria and other regional partners. And then there was the phase of the post-Chibok escalation, 2014 to 2019. The abduction of the 276 girls was a watershed moment. Under President Barack Obama then, the United States significantly scaled up support. This was actually when the support started coming, because they deployed intelligence assets and they deployed advisors. In fact, I think that was when they started working with the Defense Intelligence Agency. And this expansion continued under subsequent administrations. And some of the notable initiatives at this time was the Security Governance Initiative for Nigeria, which was announced by the Obama administration in August 2014 during the United States Africa Leaders Summit. Nigeria was selected as one of the 6 initial partners country for this program. And the joint action plan was signed later in 2017, and the official launch of the steering committee in 2018 then. The emphasis of this particular initiative then was on defense procurement to improve the Ministry of Defense material needs identification and acquisition process. Because when you want to buy military equipment from the US, it is not something you buy off the shelf, number one. It's not something that you just walk in and say we want to purchase. There are a lot of processes which starts from the Office of the Defense Corporation. And they have to approve first. And then even after agreeing, it has to go to their own, it has to go to the Congress. And in the Congress, if even one senator says no to that purchase, that is the end. So there is a lot of process. There is a lot of process that by which we have to go, and this creates bottlenecks. But this was part of it then, at least to show us the way that, okay, look, if you want to buy arms and things from us, this is the way to go about it. And then, of course, by 2020 to 2023 was the escalation and diversification of threats. At this point, the violence perpetrated by Boko Haram and its splinter group, the Islamic State, became a central focus of bilateral cooperation between the United States and Nigeria. And Nigeria faced also threat from criminal gangs at this time. And it was at this point in time, between this 2020 to 2023, that there was the establishment of the Counter-ISIS Train and Equipment Fund and the creation of the Joint Planning Cell in the United States African Command in 2021. That cell was designated to integrate United States advisors directly with Nigerian military planners to improve operational effectiveness. And indeed, we had quite a number of United States military personnel in the Defense Intelligence Agency. We had a joint intelligence cell there, and they had one or two equipment that they used to assist. So that was one of it. And then, of course, later on, we created in Nigeria's National Counterterrorism Center, which was commissioned in 2023. May I say that the United States itself was played a major advisory role in the establishment of that center. And then, of course, we continue with joint operations and intelligence in addition to military cooperation. Now, let me come down to recent strategic and operational cooperation. One key milestone was in November 25, which was just last year, when the United States and Nigeria agreed to establish a dedicated joint working group on security as part of the United States-Nigeria Binational Commission framework. Now, this initiative was launched to deepen security cooperation, combat terrorism, enhance intelligence sharing, and humanitarian response, and of course, address growing security threats in Nigeria, particularly in the Northwest and the Chad. This working group was approved. Our membership was approved by the president on November 27, with Malam Nuhu Ribadu as the chairman of the Nigerian side of the working group. And then, of course, we had other members like the Chief of Defense Staff, the Minister of Interior, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, the Inspector General of Police, the Chief of Defense Staff, and so on. So this, and then you had the United Nations, and you went on again. Then there was the approval of recently, very, very recently, of $413 million in funding for counterterrorism and security operations for Nigeria and other parts of West Africa in the United States defense budget. Now, while the act does not exactly specify how much of this $413 million is coming to Nigeria, but it is certain that we are getting a chunk of it. And it represents part of AFRICOM's request for its operations and maintenance budget in Africa. And of course, all of us are aware of what happened on the 5th of December 2025, the recent United States strikes, which was conducted in coordination with Nigerian authorities. The general belief by certain quarters of the country is that, or maybe the United States just came in and dropped their bombs and went away. But it's actually not so. The strike was meant and was targeted at Islamic State militants in Sokoto State. And Nigeria actually provided advanced intelligence and authorization for that strike. And it was part of the counterterrorism cooperation efforts to degrade the extremist networks. So I believe that these strikes actually represented a deepened tactical cooperation against jihadi threats within Nigerian borders. And they've actually formed part of a larger security integration that included United States intelligence gathering flights over Nigerian territory and delivery of military supplies to support joint operations. And of course, within this time, recently, I mean, it was in the news that there was a delivery of military supplies. This was part of the stepping up of its engagement with Nigerian security forces. So one could actually conclude at this point that looking back in history at the partnership as it has evolved over time, I think it has moved from a reactive engagement to a more proactive, though still constrained collaboration. And one point still stands out. The kidnapping of Chibok schoolgirls was a pivotal moment that galvanized the United States' attention and support. So let me just quickly delve into the pillars of security cooperation, and let's look at the key programs of United States and Nigeria support at this time in defense. I would like to start with military assistance and arms sales, because the idea has been, oh, I'd not be selling arms to us or not. And this comes under two channels. One is the foreign military financing program, which provides grants for the acquisition of United States defense articles, services, and training. And if there's a report from the United States State Department that states that between 2011 and 2015, Nigeria received $15 million worth of defense articles as a grant under the Excess Defense Articles Program. And this included 24 mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicles then. We call it MRAPs, and they were for the Northeast. And a 2 Hamilton-class United States Coast Guard high endurance cutters, which were given to the Navy. They entered into the service of the Nigerian Navy as NNS, Thunder, and Okpabana in 2011 and 2014. And similarly, in March 2017, the United States Department of Defense donated the mining and explosive ordnance disposal equipment to Nigeria and provided mine action training for Nigeria's EOD troops. One of the greatest problems we have in the Northeast is this EOD, because the terrorists have a habit of mining, of laying landmines on access roads. So many casualties have come from such ventures, where and once there's a mine on the road and you step on it, or the vehicle step on it, the initial action is that everybody wants to come down and attend to the wounded, and it is in that process that our troops usually get ambushed. So with this kind of assistance, you discover that sometimes when the troops are moving ahead now, we have these teams that have been trained by the United States. They go ahead and mine the advancing route, and then this has reduced casualty in a significant way. And then building also on the air-to-ground integration program, because there's an air-to-ground integration program for our personnel. The Department of State obligated $941,000 in peacekeeping from the peacekeeping funds in 2021 for advisory services to the armed forces of Nigeria to enhance accountability and justice. And of course, the most important one is foreign military sales. Have they sold anything to us or not? Of course, they have. For example, between 2018 to 2022, the United States authorized the permanent export of over $53 million worth of defense articles to Nigeria via the direct commercial sales. The categories that were exported to Nigeria, then fire control, laser equipment, imaging equipment. These are actually surveillance equipment, guidance equipment, and also firearms and related articles, including guns and some armament. And one very important one has been the 590 million in active government-to-government sales cases with Nigeria that occurred under the foreign military sales system. And this included the 2017 sale of 12 A-29 Super Tucano aircraft that was actually worth 497 million to support Nigerian military operations against Boko Haram and ISIS in Africa. And these sales also included special training on international humanitarian law, air-to-ground integration program designed to provide institutional and technical training to the armed forces of Nigeria in order to mitigate the risk of civilian harm. Because with good air-to-ground integration system, civilian casualties can actually be curtailed. And then, but many of us would know, some of us would know that the Super Tucano deal was delayed for years over the law violations, basically because, I mean, the United States has this rule that any country that is involved in human rights violations, that they would not sell arms to them. And this was a problem for quite a while, but eventually we were able to overcome that issue. And that made the sale of the Super Tucanos to go through. And then, of course, in August of last year, Nigeria also delivered the first payment for 12 attack helicopters. That was worth another $997 million. So, and this foreign military sales case includes not just the helicopters, there was an additional $25 million of funding that was allocated by United States itself for Nigeria's aid to ground integration program. And in order to continue to train our personnel on targeting processes and so on, so as to reduce civilian casualties. So, and other major transfers have included armored vehicles, drones.
Major General, you have 2 more minutes, please.
And so on.
Yes.
So, now have there been challenges? Okay, there have also been other programs, counterterrorism programs, partnerships, and so on and so forth. So we cannot go through it. It's a gamut of things. But there have also been challenges, like I mentioned, the LIA law that says once there's anything, especially Amnesty International, once they write something concerning human rights against the Nigerian military, there's always a problem with getting arms from the United States. And then, of course, is the very fact that there's what I would say called the United States Balancing Act. They try to balance between selling arms to us, and at the same time not violating their so-called humanitarian law of not giving arms to those to countries that are found wanting on humanitarian issues. That's one very, very major challenge that we are still trying to look at. And then there's also the issue of Nigeria. Any country that United States is going into, they must have a strategic reason. There must be something they want to gain there. Nigeria, we claim to be non-aligned, and our romance with China, with Russia, is not something that is palatable for the United States. So I think that has been one challenge, and that's why in the first instance, they will want to go all out, 100%, to actually assist us. Yes, they want to assist us to the point that their interest is protected. But I think a time has come for us to actually choose who we want to be with. So these are some of the issues, and then there are also so what are future pathways? I think for the United States, they need to adopt an institutional over transactional approach. They need to double down on security governance initiatives, especially concerning Nigerians. They need to enhance the collaboration they have with us, as it were, and also increase military hardware to us, of course. And then on the human rights issue, we should have a robust creative engagement on this. We should shift from pure vetting and denial to joint investigation. Because if I say there are human rights violations, just don't take it lion hook and sinker, but let there be an engagement where your team and our team can actually investigate and see if those human rights violations actually took place. And of course, for us as a nation too, we need to establish clear, measurable benchmarks for successes, so that we know, we can say at this point that okay, we have achieved some level of success and so on. So I will stop at this point. I will just say that the future for us should be about quality and not just quantity, and it's going to require difficult conversations and long-term commitments from both sides. And the goal should be a Nigerian security apparatus that is capable of defending its citizens lawfully and effectively, with the United States acting as a supportive but not domineering partner. So I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, General. I must thank you so much because you've laid out from a very deep understanding of this relationship and this collaboration that has existed for well over 3 decades now. And you've actually laid it out very deeply and even challenged some of the notions about why Obama is being vilified for the role he played. You've also pointed us very clearly to the nature of that relationship, which I must say is very intricate and woven at so many levels, not just in terms of the supply of hardware, but even in terms of training, in terms of long existing forms of collaboration. We've talked about like the working group, advisory, funding, dedicated partnerships that have existed over time. The whole question around human rights, the question around the security governance programs. So it's been a very robust relationship over the years, and I think that this raises a very important point, which I hope at some point we'll all return to, is what does this kind of relationship that has existed over the years, as much as America has its own reservations about our non-alignment, what does it mean for our strategic autonomy as a country in a multipolar world? What does it really mean, as it were? These are partnerships of support that have existed. Are they likely to undermine that autonomy that Nigeria seeks to find? And what is the value of the autonomy without these partnerships in place? Just again, thank you very much. I think we'll go to the last speaker now, because we did spend quite a bit of time on this presentation, which I must say was very much needed, because it gave us a real sense of the nature of this engagements that have existed over the years, and largely from a very knowledgeable military perspective. Thank you so much for that contribution. Before I call on the third speaker, I haven't seen nor met General Ishola for years. I think it's like 3 decades now. I can't believe that General is right here, but thank God, 2026, I'm going to look for him wherever he is. Thank you so much, General, for being on this platform. Thank you. So let me invite...
You're welcome, sir.
Thank you. Let me invite Professor Shagdam Wapmuk, I got the name, I'm sure, to please come on board. And my program said something different, but I'm sure I've been misleading all of you on what the program is. But let me just read what I have here, but you tell us what you have. Nigerian strategic position in global power competition. If that's not it, let's hear what you have, and we're welcome to hear you now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It's a very big pleasure to meet you in person. Your name I've heard a couple of times while working at the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. Finally, I can actually attach the name to a person. Yes, the topic you announced is actually apt. That was the topic that was allocated to me. Nigeria's strategic position in global power competition. Basically, the topic requires me to actually interrogate where Nigeria, stands or sits or leans in the contemporary competition for power. The nature of this contemporary international system, you agree with me, is undergoing a transition. Now, from the immediate post-1990, post-Cold War era, where we saw American dominance, whether in the military sphere, in the economic sphere, or in several other spheres, particularly leading to the counterterrorism or counterinsurgency adventure globally. America held sway for a very long period until when new powers began to emerge that are increasingly challenging American dominance. Now, these new powers or new economies, as some term them, inclusive of China, Russia, India, and so many others, they pose a form of threat because they also competing for access to strategic resources, markets, as well as partners in several areas, in several regions, including Africa. So with this, we've seen this global competition is no longer the military-like kind of competition or traditional military/ideological competition that we knew in the Cold War era, but rather it's a form of competition in terms of economic statecraft or technological dominance, if you may wish, or infrastructural development, as well as diplomatic influence. This is the new drive. This is what they are actually after. Now, at some point in time, there were some regions of the world that were actually dismissed as peripheral, particularly in the case of Africa by the Afro-pessimists, who saw nothing good in Africa. But at some point in time, when they realized that, look, there were strategic benefits to be derived from Africa, they decided to deploy for their own influence, combination of both economic, political, as well as security instruments to achieve their ends. That brought in the competition because this time around, it wasn't the traditional powers alone that were struggling for access to the strategic benefits derivable from Africa. But new powers were to also come in. And what were they competing for? In the case of Africa, its vast resources were increasingly recognized. The growing population, as well as expanding markets, and also the geostrategic position Africa presents became key issues, particularly the matters concerning, security, energy security. All of these were available in Africa. That brought into context the competition between the major powers and the competing powers. What of Nigeria? What was the major attraction? Again, in the context of this Africa we are talking about, Nigeria happens to be the most populous country, one of Africa's largest economies, of course, a major market, as well as a leading producer of oil and gas, of which some of the earlier presenters have actually pointed out. And of course, Nigeria's location within the Gulf of Guinea and its relevance for security considerations. So also you can extend that to its role in regional organizations, including AU, ECOWAS, and of course, a key partner to be taken into account for its relevance within the international system. Now, with this, I don't think we need to belabor the matter as to why Africa has become a theater or a core region for strategic competition between major powers or the superpowers and then the emerging powers from the South. Basically, I believe the essence of this presentation is quite clear. It's just for us to interrogate, Nigeria's strategic position. As I said, interpreted to mean where does Nigeria stand, or where does it sit, or where it's leaning in terms of this competition. Which power is it engaging or not engaging? I believe Bolaji will share the presentation, the slide to the participants, so I don't need to go through the entire outline. However, we thought it wise that we should have a very clear understanding of our trajectory in terms of what we understand, to mean global power competition, or what do we really mean in the context of this presentation by strategic positioning. I've tried to explain the issue of strategic positioning, but in terms of global power competition, we are actually talking about some form of, engagement, strategic interactions by, major countries, or what we refer to as, major powers. And their aim strictly is for them to maximize their influence, to secure their strategic advantages, which they often define as a national interest, quote and unquote. And of course, they want to ensure that they drive global institutions, they shape international norms, and several others. They achieve this through several means. We're talking about the military dimension to a very large extent, but it is also driven through economic, technological, and diplomatic platforms as well. Now, the reality of it is that if you must take a strategic position, it means you have to make choices. It also means you have to adopt some policies. Now, this form of positioning, whether you're a developed country or a developing country, you have to actually ensure you do this to maximize your interest within the international system. Now, when you happen to be a weaker partner, then you have to be more careful in terms of what the choices you make, the decisions you make, as well as the policies you make. So for us to clearly have an understanding of the question is about who are the great powers? What do they want? And why are they after such a power? Okay. Going forward, we also need to appreciate the theoretical perspective as to why this must be understood what the US is actually struggling to achieve. Then states are in pursuit of their national interests and survival within a system that is seen as anarchic. And of course, we don't need soothsayers to come and tell us that increasingly the world is becoming, the national system is becoming more anarchic. So whatever they can put forward to ensure that they maximize their power and their balance their, benefits, this will actually be done. Now, by implication, for Nigeria's strategic engagement with the major powers, then they have to balance strategy as well as autonomy so that it can actually achieve its own security. This contrasts with the liberal perspective, which often talks about the role of international organizations, emphasis on, international cooperation as a way to reduce conflict within the international system. The whole logic from the liberal perspective is that, look, we can do it together, not against or at the expense of one another. Hence, countries are expected to join international organizations like the UN, ECOWAS, as well as, those regional ones like African Union and several others, so that they can actually pool resources together, cooperate, as well as pool their capacities together, not to become pounds of the great powers. Moving forward, the great powers competition, major powers as well as interest. The question here is this: what are the driving forces of these major powers? Please, we need to know that as soon as we have competition within the system, you already knew you were a power, all of a sudden there are those who are contesting positions with you. Then definitely there will be some form of intense, rivalry, as well as sometimes backlash to those who align with or with the other. And against this backdrop, we can see a situation whereby the more economic active these new emerging powers are becoming, the more the global powers or the great powers feel threatened. And this has actually taken shape in form of what we often refer today as the new scramble for Africa, or the scramble for Africa 2.0, as the case might be. So the question, who are the powers and what are the driving interests? Now, one is the United States of America, which previous speakers have actually talked about. I'll try to not to go over what they have actually said, but to point out that under President Trump's administration, we've seen a brazen pursuit of national interests for the security of strategic resources, including what is now seen as abduction, using some said is not kidnapping, the abduction of a sitting president. The question is, what happens to international norms? What happens to international cooperation, etc.? So we can as well ask, Washington's renewed interest in Nigeria, is it really for the benefit of Nigeria, or is it to stabilize Nigeria? Listening to the previous speaker, he of course pointed out that, look, there is much to be benefited from our deepened engagement with the United States of America. And I think that the Nigerian foreign policy managers will actually do well to actually re-engage these issues again and again. Now, beyond the United States of America, the next competitor happens to be China. Now, China, as we all know, has actually emerged, refusing to call herself a developed country, but a developing one. Meaning, yes, with the Belt and Road Initiative and several initiatives put forward to achieve their goal. The other power happens to be Russia, which has actually reasserted itself as a global factor to be reckoned with. There is no doubt. In terms of connection with Nigeria in this regard, we've seen cooperation in the areas of security cooperation, arms sales, and some other forms of partnership. Other emerging powers like China, India, for instance, has been here for a very long time. The bulk of the interest for these particular powers have been more of economic, but with some semblance of other areas as well. The bottom line here is that they all employ near same instruments: economic, political, military. And what we've seen emerging in these recent times is that using the platform of this one country, one nation, one continent form of engagement. One question that we actually sought to actually address in this presentation is, what are the strategic areas of competition? Quite broad, yes, but I will try as much as possible to highlight some of these areas, some of the breakdown, as well as figures associated with these interests are actually provided in the presentation. These areas include energy and critical resources, which of course is what they are all after. Others have to do with trade, investment, and infrastructure development. Reference in this case to both US, China, and other emerging powers. Of course, the issue of technology, digital governance and dominance, as well as extension of influence. Who are the key players in the context of the fourth industrial revolution? Which form of technology are they competing for? And then, of course, the issue of security and then military cooperation. Question: where does Nigeria stand in this regard? What are Nigeria's strategic assets in the competitive world that we see today? Saying that Nigeria is well endowed is not an issue anymore. Reference have been made to the point that, look, Nigeria has the capacity. We always talk about Nigeria having, being endowed to be able to actually assert herself or stand in the competitive world of today. For instance, the population size is no longer news. Yes, far above 200 million, which is Africa's most populous. Then we begin to talk about potential when we talk about what it means for markets. The population increasingly translates into a market power and then strategic relevance in terms of global calculations. No wonder both the great powers and emerging powers are increasingly seeking a drive into the Nigerian market. Then, of course, Nigeria's geostrategic location, the heartland of not only West Africa, but Africa. Particularly when we look at its position within the Gulf of Guinea, and of course, its role in terms of maritime importance for maritime security. Then key, energy as well as natural resources endowed within Nigeria. The oil, the gas, and other strategic resources, minerals, as we can see in recent times, all have become an issue. Other minerals needed to actually fuel or engine the growth of the fourth industrial revolution are to be found in Nigeria. Of course, our credentials in military as well as peacekeeping are no longer new. So much have been written about these particular ones. One way which we can understand Nigeria's strategic relevance or its position within the contemporary global competition is for us to reflect deep on the nature of our relationships and engagement with the major powers. Now, we must also understand that these relationships are not only driven by competing interests of the external factors, but also by our own, as Nigeria, our own development aspirations, security challenges in contemporary times, and of course, our role both in West Africa as well as in Africa. We need to appreciate that so that we can actually know where we really are. For instance, much has been said about Nigeria-US relations by previous speakers, but I just need to actually underscore some of the other areas that may have not been deeply highlighted. First of all, we can group them into security, cooperation, and counterterrorism. We can also take on the issue of democracy, governance, and then, of course, the issue of rule of law. There is the economic and trade aspects, particularly with reference to the African Growth and Opportunity Act. Then, of course, issues of development, humanitarian assistance, etc. And then the educational, cultural, as well as institutional, arrangements. So much has been said about the security, cooperation, and counterterrorism. I don't think we need to be leveled that. But just there have been recent concerns about the deepened interest of the US in Nigeria. Whether it is actually a goal towards strengthening Nigeria's capacity to address the internal security or to further weaken it. Then, of course, China. China's key areas include infrastructure financing and investment, trade relations. The issue of asymmetry has emerged as a concern, particularly the issue of debt in our relations with China. as well as the emergence of industrial and special economic zones within Nigeria, and then the strategic as well as soft power relations. Now, with reference to infrastructure, we've seen China's deepened role as a financier of infrastructure development. Of course, we know the role China played in Nigeria railway in particular, a key area of reference as well as a benefit to be reckoned with, but also concern debt crisis. Nigeria-Russia is also there. Key areas of cooperation include defense cooperation, arms, diplomacy, security and military training, energy cooperation, as well as industrialization amongst others. Of course, there's also trade as well as diplomatic dimension. Of interest to us here is actually the defense and cooperation and then arms diplomacy. So, Russia appears to be an alternative. The previous presenter mentioned the challenges we are having or we've had with the US when we needed them most. One question that has actually continued to challenge international relations has been whether there is the phenomenon of who are your friends. We know that, yes, there are no friends in the true sense, but national interest. But even so, who are your strategic partners? Can you count on them when you are in trouble? Or they leave you until when you get your axe back and they come back and claim to have cordial relations and the whole business continue, or even threaten you, you must continue. Russia presented an alternative back to the Civil War era, and under the administration of Goodluck Jonathan again, that gives us at least some insight into what we are dealing with. As I said earlier, Nigeria's role in ECOWAS, in African Union, so much has been talked about it in the past, written about it, so we need not be there with that. But I want to underscore this. Are there constraints to Nigeria's strategic positioning? First, we are in doubt. We can do it. However, what have been the major constraints? First of all, internal security challenges in Nigeria is no longer news. Same also for the economic dependency vulnerability. We are heavily dependent on oil. The present administration has actually done much in terms of trying to diversify. But even so, each time there's a global fluctuation of oil prices, we know what happens. What of the governance as well as the institutional deficiencies? Corruption remains an issue. Is more like we try to kill corruption. Corruption is killing us the more. So also the issues about ineffectiveness in terms of how we coordinate our initiatives, including the areas of foreign policy, how we respond more reactionary than being proactive. There is a talk about inconsistency in terms of foreign policy as well. There's always this shift. We talk about continuity in change, but even so, more sloganeering from time to time. Today, we are talking about the 4Ds. And then, of course, Nigeria, one of the key problems also remains Nigeria's infrastructural gap. Now, the point being made here is that unless we are able to address these challenges, these concerns, they continue to weaken us, particularly the internal security challenges in recent times is a major constraint to Nigeria's strategic positioning in the contemporary global competition. For one, it is actually a major hindrance to the attraction of foreign direct investment. And actually, it's also a major drive for the Japa syndrome, the migration of Nigerians. Even when the developed countries are no longer welcoming, migrants into their country, particularly the United States of America. So it's something we need to deal with. I'm very happy with the last presenter when he said, we look forward to a time when we will also not be craving to go anywhere. We have no reason to actually want to travel to any other country. So the point here is that we need to address these challenges if we must actually achieve our goal of being a key player within this global system with the ongoing competition, not only by the global powers, but also with the emerging powers. In conclusion, Your Excellency, fellow participants, I want to say that Nigeria's ability to enhance its strategic position in an increasingly competitive environment depends on the deliberate policies as well as choices that Nigeria makes. They must align to Nigeria's national interests, of course, with a clear view of what the opportunities are. Then we can go all out and pursue that. But the question is, do we align ourselves with one power or multiple powers? We've seen in the past where countries actually took advantage of their alignment or identification with more than one. And so there is actually benefit to be derived. And so against this backdrop, the recent discussion has been about the need for a strategic autonomy, while remaining non-aligned with a clear policy of ensuring that, look, you are independent, however, pursuing your goals within the international system. So the point here is that rather than just aligning exclusively with any single power, Nigeria can pursue flexible partnerships based on means with specific interests in mind, with a view to achieving its national interests. Your Excellency, with this last point, I want to thank you very much and also thank the organizers for inviting me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor, for it was breathtaking. So much packed into the last 30 minutes of your presentation, and very much something we all need to reflect upon. Just the nature of these global competitions that we are beginning to see, particularly post-Cold War, and just the fact that it's increasingly becoming driven by the economics of it, and the growing emergence of Africa as one of the battlegrounds of that competition itself is also very key to what you have presented to us. Importantly, too, is the much you have brought attention to on the constraints which we have as a country in Nigeria, our own failing to be able to take advantage of what is happening elsewhere. The competitions with the great powers is also an opportunity for us if you think about it from that perspective, and what we can do in order to be part of those who have actually come to our door to ask us to be collaborators with them. You continue to say that we should hold on to our non-aligned status, but also think about how we can strategically remain autonomous. I mean, that's the big question that we need to answer. How can we remain autonomous and at the same time be strategic enough to say, be unaligned and at the same time take advantage of whatever that comes with. I think these are many conversations which we need to continue to carry on with. At this point, I want to invite us all. We have 30 more minutes to the end of our session today. 20 minutes will be invested in hearing the views of other persons who have joined us in this interaction today. And so the floor is open now. I think there's a hand up. Remy, is that you? We'll be happy to hear from you, Ambassador Remy. Is that you?
Yes, please.
Raising your hands. Please go ahead. Yeah. Thank you for joining us as well, Remy. Thank you. And Happy New Year.
Yes, thank you, my sister. Actually, thanks. I need first to thank all the presenters. It's an exciting and interesting topic. And as rightly pointed out by my brother, Shadam Wakmak, on this issue of strategic autonomy, which he knows I'm one of the international relations experts that have just finished a work on that with Akinten Rinwa. I quite agree with some of the points, but I tend to want us to look at the area where the strategic importance. Where are we? What should Nigeria do? What should Africa do per se? And it beats me all, given the fact that just January 11, we all witnessed 50 years ago when our head of state then, late General Murtala Mohammed, whose anniversary will be celebrated possibly next month on 13, who was killed. Looking at 11 January, when during the period of General Ford, that Africa has come of age and is no longer under the orbit of any extra continental power. And we should not take any order from any country, however powerful. And it's contradictory to what we are witnessing now, asking US to come to our aid. Is it calling them? Is it an invitation just for them to come to take our resources? Despite it means, in essence, we have a failure of political and military leadership. So, and this event also raises some fundamental questions about our sovereignty, about our constitutional governance, about civilian protection, and the integrity of Nigeria's social contract, as pointed out by some of the speakers. So the question then now is that where are we? And we must not become excessively triggered by the shock and awe spectre we are witnessing. We need to get focused. And as rightly said by Trump, this is not the first time. And I don't believe that they came without some of their own national interest. So against that background, scholars and military experts, we have a lot on our head. But the way forward, African and Nigeria in particular, calling the giant of Africa, also needs to utilize this point to call for a root and branch transformation of the international system through collective peace and security by mobilizing the African group at the UN to involve or invoke, let's say, to invoke Article 109 to convene the General Conference to renew the UN Charter and looking at the way in which a seat could be given to Africa as well. Despite the fact there might be a caveat there because of this issue of veto power, but nevertheless, it's an area that we need to look into to break the power of these so-called big powers of P5. In fact, it's no more P5, it's even P3 now. The other two, they are also facing their problem in Greenland. I'm in the UK here, so I'm following it on a daily basis. So that's just my point, that we're at a crossroad, especially those of us who witnessed who were, let's say, in the university or in the A-levels at those periods of 1975, where Murtala said, so where are we now? Where are we? Where is our autonomy? Where is the strategy there? So that's just my point. Thank you, Madam Moderator, Excellency.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. Very big questions, very huge questions. Where are we now? Where is our autonomy? Where is our sovereignty? You questioned the capabilities of the military to provide us with that, those assurances. Can we also hear from other persons, any other perspectives that we need to capture at this point? Doesn't look like people are in the mood to contribute this morning.
Not that they are not in the mood. I think a lot could not get in because of, I don't know. It took me time before I got in as well.
Yeah,
so
we had a hitch.
It's a very good topic, but apparently those scholars that needs to know more on this are not online. Thank you.
Yeah, we had a little bit of a tech hitch in the morning, but I think we resolved it a bit late. Yeah, notwithstanding, does anybody else? Yes, somebody has to stand. Shola, is that you? Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, Shola. We can't hear you. On mute.
Okay, good morning, Ma.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you so much, Your Excellency, and panel of experts. I really appreciate this opportunity. Shola is a media and communications expert. I just want to quickly just raise one or two posers quickly. I listened to General Oyefesobi, and I was also, led into certain areas which I would never have known because I never donned the uniforms. He got to a major general level; he knows them, and I appreciate that. But I want to quickly ask, General, is it a case of us trying to eat our cake and have it? I remember, just a few years after I commenced my media career, I saw Lieutenant General Victor Malu, our Chief of Army Staff, the first one for this Fourth Republic. Just a couple of months, I think about 6 or 8 months after he was removed as Chief of Army Staff in 2001, he appeared on national television in an interview called Point Blank, moderated by the DG of NTA. Then he was Director News, Professor Tony Redia. And he said that the reason why he was removed, he was no longer in uniform, so he had what he felt was a privilege to speak. The reason he was removed as Chief of Army Staff was his refusal to accede to General Obasanjo, the head of state, his commander-in-chief, as request for AFRICOM to be sited in Nigeria, the AFRICOM headquarters. That was the main. He stood his ground, and General said, and the Chief Obasanjo said, "I'm the head of state, I'm the commander-in-chief. You need to go." And he asked, he withdrew his commission and all. Now the same AFRICOM, with glee, has been helping us. Why I'm saying this is that there can be a rejig of alignments over time when you realize that you can't do things alone. Like General Oyefesobi has said, AFRICOM is now gleefully putting on a social media post, "We have dropped the stuff for Nigeria, what so and so, military hardware." I'm asking, sir, this is our foreign policy. I'm not in that field, but I'm a diplomatic editor for my station. Is this Afrocentrism, how has it helped us? Shouldn't we just go straight? I'm talking about the other prof now's comments, to realizing that it's just about strategic interest. And let's not forget, President Trump has, and I like his sincerity, he openly says what he wants to do, no diplomatic finesse around it. He said, it's about America and what America can get. So if the US helps us to curb insecurity, rout terrorists, kill them with their own bombs, and stop the horrible killing, which has a nexus to mining of precious materials in certain parts of this country, I humbly think there's nothing wrong with that. If the US, I would prefer to have security and preserve my life than to have minerals under my house for which people sack me, kill me, for God forbid, rape wife and children, and say I'm preserving. I prefer that. So this is just the consensus we're getting for those of us who are in media analysis from citizenry around that place, that those troublemakers, that the kingpins around them, the arrest should be made, the publication should be made, the publicization should be made, so that we name and shame and not be going round in circles as a nation. If America will help us, let America help us openly so that we can make progress as a nation. Thank you, ma'am.
Great question there.
Excellency, can I talk?
You dodge the question of sovereignty that is also very topical. Who is going to talk again? Please go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, can I talk?
Go ahead. Can I come back to you in Can I come back to you in 5 minutes? Let me see whether there is any other, because all the speakers will have a right of reply at the end.
Okay.
Is there anybody else who wants to raise another point before we return to them? We have about 15 or more minutes left. Anybody else wants to make a contribution? Okay, if there's nobody to make a contribution, General, we will give you 2 minutes to just comment on what the two speakers have said, just in 2 minutes, and then we'll hear from the other two speakers too.
Okay, thank you very much, Excellency. So, what brother said is very interesting. I remember this incident, this event I was talking about, and I remember when when the US were dialoguing with Nigeria to establish AFRICOM in Nigeria. The issue then, and which is up till now, I can tell you, is that we will always say that we cannot have foreign boots on our soil. Or if the US comes to establish a military base here, they can spy on us, they can do this, they can launch anything on us at any time. And I used to, and even up to now, when I discussed with some colleagues, I asked a question. I said, what capability do we really have that this is a country that they don't even have to have boots on ground to launch. They can easily launch from wherever they are. They can even launch from even Africa. So to me, I think we are the ones who are losing, because when they wanted to establish AFRICOM, then US wanted to establish AFRICOM in Sambisa Forest. So, and that was the cover that, look, this thing is not within the main cities or so on. It's in this Sambisa Forest. Said no, it's still Nigerian soil. And that was the bone of contention of General Malu then. As far as he was concerned, having US to establish AFRICOM in Nigeria is a no-go. But I can tell you that if they had established in AFRICOM, I doubt if they had established in Sambisa Forest, I doubt if Boko Haram would have been able to take root in that Sambisa Forest. Because they would have definitely secured that place. And they would have, I mean, you can imagine the kind of surveillance gadgets and so on they will have. And because they have something there, they wouldn't want anything to come near it. So, and I think they would have been even more committed to us by that particular establishment. But at the end of the day, we said no. And up to today, we are still saying no to certain things. We just want to just come and help us. So, but you see, the truth is that nobody comes to do anything for free. And that is what Trump is saying. You don't come in to do anything for free. We are not like him. We went to Liberia. A lot of people died. We spent a lot of money. We went to Sierra Leone. A lot of people died. A lot of my colleagues died. We spent a lot of money. But today, we are not there. We are not in Sierra Leone. We are not mining diamond or gold in Sierra Leone. We are not mining rubber in Liberia. We don't have any major economic investment in Liberia or Sierra Leone. We just went in there and came out on the basis that we are just a regional hegemon. But, you know, other countries don't think like that. Nothing goes for free. So it's a partnership. And I think for us, a time is coming, and it's already coming in, that we should actually take a stand. We can have other relationships on the economic side, social side, and so on. But when it comes to the military, who should we stand with fully? Who should we stand with? Like somebody like the other speaker said, if there is a problem in Nigeria today, a serious military problem or an invasion, who can you call that we get up and say, deploy troops to that place? So it's something we need to think about.
Thank you so much, General. I wish we had the advantage of also listening to the other countries and what they have, the nature of their partnerships, their military partnerships with Nigeria. Clearly, from your presentation, the depth of of that relationship is very, very much something to be concerned about, and where we go to in the future should be a function of where our investments have been well established over the years. Thank you so much. Can I now invite our first speaker, Mr. Let me get the ranking right. Sorry, ACG Sunday James, to please give us 2-3 minutes of feedback if you have any. If you don't, then you're welcome to go on to the next person.
Yes, I want to dwell on the Afrocentrism. Africa should be the centerpiece of Nigeria's foreign policy.
Again?
I want to center my conclusion on Afrocentrism. That is, Africa should be the centerpiece of Nigeria's foreign policy. Meaning we must remain Afrocentric. We need to resuscitate AU and ECOMOG as a standby force, not in letters, but operationally, than having AFRICOM base that is alien to the region and is tied to foreign interests, that would rather impoverish Africa than adding value to our African brotherhood at continental and regional level. I was privileged in March 2024 as the most senior immigration officer under whose command the Nigerian-Niger border falls. When Mr. President gave the directive that the border should be open, I was the one that went to open the border. But you can see that the Sahel connectivity has further broken relationship between the ECOWAS countries of Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. And for us, Niger is a very, very important interest country to us. We must do everything diplomatically to see how we can see that we resolve that relationship so as to enforce a more broader security at the border, because I'm talking now on migration governance. It's very, very important to us. Thank you.
Grateful for that input on migration. Very, very important. Can I also invite Professor to give us a brief? Professor, we're running out of time, but 2-3 minutes, please, and then we shall be rounding up our session for the day.
Okay, thank you very much, Your Excellency. My elder brother, Ambassador Remy, actually raised very, very insightful as well as topical questions that I strongly believe that we cannot exhaust today. He asked, where are we now? Where is our sovereignty? Where is our autonomy? Arising from one-time declaration of from Nigeria itself that, look, we've come of age. Well, come of age, the thinking then was that, okay, with independence, we are good to go. But it was Leighton Nkrumah who actually reminded us that political independence without economic independence, we're not yet there. And it has come to pass. In fact, those leaders were actually great prophets. They were visionaries who saw tomorrow. Now, that said, I want to underpin this in terms of both a response to that as well as possible way forward, a springboard for us to reassert ourselves from the major challenges we are having. Now, if we look through history, we will see that we will seem to make progress in Nigeria, maybe one step, then we'll go back 2 or 3 steps backwards. By this, I'm referring to the major internal challenges or constraints. Nigeria's constraints for her to be able to take a strong, to be autonomous or to be a leader, quote and unquote, in the true sense, both within Africa, even having a standing to represent Africa on the world stage. The challenges have actually been domestic. Now, back again to the core issue which we are confronted with today, which is majorly security, amongst others. You'll find out that we were major contributors to peacekeeping. But what happened? We had to actually look inwards, rethink peacekeeping for a while because of our internal security challenges. Today, we're having a lot of resources being deployed more to defense as against other sectors that count developmentally. Why? Because of the internal security challenges. Today, a bomb made with 5,000 naira can bring down a multi-billion-dollar, building that has been that took so many years of planning to actually build. These among so many others. Now, on the issue of autonomy, whether we like it or not, we live in a world that recognizes increasingly that, look, you pursue your interests. The core independence, quote and unquote, sovereignty in the true sense, whereby we define it to mean that, look, we don't need anybody, telling us what to do, may not hold water as at the old times when we actually live. It's evident today that, look, we need support to be able to address the issue of, insecurity. For instance, terrorism and insurgency in the northwest, and north central, among others. So the point being made here is that the whole of these gamut, we need to rethink them, rather than look at it as a pure autarchical kind of, engagement. No, it is more of an interdependence. But first of all, we need to clearly understand what is of interest for us. Sometimes you wonder, are we working against Nigeria or for Nigeria's interest? So it all begins at home. Okay, we need to address internal security challenges, our economic vulnerability. For instance, our dependence on the imports of oil. Efforts to actually now refine at home, as Dangote's case and the whole politics has actually shown. You find out that the internal wranglings are from within. So the question is, whose interests are we representing? I think I'll put it to rest here.
Thank you so much, Professor. I can't thank all of you enough for such eloquence and the brilliance that has come into all of this. I must say that, Professor, your last point, which we confronted as as diplomats when I was at the African Union is you can only give what you have. Your country is at the brink in terms of its internal cohesion, and it makes it almost impossible for you to become a strategic global competitor or player, which is the bottom line of what we are talking about today. So I would just take a few minutes to close, make a few closing comments, and then invite Bolaji to have the last say before we end the meeting for today. Sorry, was Stanley, were you going to say something? Stanley? Okay. So Nigeria's challenge from all we are beginning to hear and the conversations we've had, the challenge in today's global order is not how we navigate power competitions, what Russia is saying, what China is saying. It's not how we navigate, but how we convert the relationships we have with these global powers into power for ourselves. I think we have not yet done enough in terms of converting the relationships. We're not going to be competing with them, but if we have relationships where these powerful people coming into our space, like we've seen with the United States, and collaborating with us on various things, I think the responsibility which we have as a country is how do we turn what we have in terms of a collaboration or a partnership into a source of power itself. And that source of power is such that we can use it to secure our people, and we can use it to lead the region, we can use it to change, to shape our future relationship in terms of the dynamics that exist on ground. I hear the point that the Major General makes on our relationship and why we shouldn't be too uncomfortable with be holding on to the American relationship. But I guess that also means that there are many other partnerships that exist, which we also need to compare and see where we stand on all of this. Non-alignment is important, but we also need to ask ourselves, is non-alignment leading us to passivity? You know, are we being passive and neutral in ways that are not beneficial to us as a country, and therefore not helping our strategic interest in the long term? We talked a little bit about our foreign diplomacy. I mean, I didn't hear a lot about that in this conversation, but of course, to what extent is what we are projecting through our foreign policies and foreign action, taking advantage of these partnerships and projecting our domestic strengths in a way that we are able to make ourselves seen. I don't think there's anything wrong with these global players and great powers coming to us on the strength of what we define as our own local context and the local strengths that we have. We've enumerated some of them: our population, our oil and gas, our strategic location, and all of that. These are all well known, but how have we used them in terms of dynamics that exist between us? How have we defined our security cooperation beyond the military? There's been so much talk in Nigeria around we didn't get the arms we needed, we didn't get the support. Somebody, I think it was Remy, who brought us back to we didn't get the support we needed at the time we wanted. Obviously, I don't think that aligns 100% with what we heard from the Major General. But I'm not getting into the politics of that or the argument or debates around that. I'm just saying that how did we find ourselves in a situation where we were being denied these things? It must be something we need to address at some point. It means that even in terms of the relationship and the dynamics that exist, we do not often take advantage of the powers that we can exercise within those relationships that we have established. And all that we say about ourselves as a global power and the main powerhouse of Africa, as it were. I get the point that our first speaker makes about being Africa-centered. He talks about the strategic position of Niger, for example, being Africa-centered in our multilateralism. We've done that over the years. I think at some point, I hope we will interrogate it more closely. I remember that being an ambassador, we used to always say Africa is the centerpiece of our foreign policy. I mean, just in terms of this global competition that is going on and the dynamics of it, I think we need to have that conversation all over again. How do we leverage on all these economic advantages and the mineral resources and all the things, the energy and things that we present, even in terms of climate change and the solutions around climate change, the opportunities that we bring in Africa and bring in on our country? How do we take advantage of that and leverage more strategically? Again, it's about power and power relations. How are we handling power relations? Why are we allowing the power relations to be skewed so badly against us? And what do we need to do to bring it back to the center? So I hope that out of this conversation, we can look more long-term at how we can bring a more coherent brand strategy that does not abandon Africa, does not also abandon the needs of our citizens. I think the point, I think it was Shola who made on the very last point, was that it often sounds like we are almost working against ourselves. How can we start working for ourselves and making working for ourselves look like it is pretty, it is sexy to look and work for yourself, like Donald Trump has done. He's not ashamed to tell you very, very clearly that this is about American interest. It's about time Nigeria started talking like this is about Nigeria. We should stop being ashamed about talking that it is about Nigeria and making Nigeria the centerpiece of everything we are going to do. I hope this has been a very useful engagement. I wish we had had more people on board. I'm sure that as we continue to play out this series every month, it's going to build its own momentum, and we're going to see over the next 1 year a real robust community of people who are interested in engaging in what we have started today. Thank you so very much for being a part of this. I'm honored to have moderated, and it is my privilege and honor to greet General Ishola Williams over and over again. Thank you so much. And now I hand over to Bolaji to conclude. Thank you.
Thank you. This is where we say a round of applause to Her Excellency Ambassador Nkoyo Toyo, but it's a bit difficult to do that online, but thank you. We all appreciate you for leading this conversation in a very good way. We also want to thank our panelists, ACG Sunday James, Major General Gio Yefesobi, and Professor Shagdam for your contribution. We want to thank all our guests. Thank you. For those that also asked questions, Shola, Jai, Simi, Ambassador Remy, and I forgot, I know somebody else asked questions. We want to also apologize for the mix-up in sending the link on time. I've had a meeting with our media crew, so this is not going to happen again. We will send one, and then just few hours to the program, we'll send another one just to confirm that everybody is online with us. I need to just list some few courses related to the topic we had today that we run at the Peace Building Development Consult. We have the Foreign Policy School that we run in partnership with the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. We have the International Trade Negotiation course. We have the International Security Management course. And we have the United Nations Immersion Program that we run with the United Nations Institute for Training and Research. So all these can are also available within the Peace Building Development Consult for people who are interested in knowing more about foreign policy, diplomacy, and international security. On behalf of all of us, the chairman of PBDC and also the vice chairperson, Ambassador Nkoyo Toyo, I want to really thank you for joining us. This is going to be a monthly program that will be looking at current issues happening both locally and internationally as it relates to Nigeria and Nigerians in diaspora. I wish you a pleasant day. Thank you and bye-bye. Yeah, David and Yahweh.
It's okay. See.
No.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Bolu, I was on one online meeting. I just finished.